Once we are live, sir, I'll just share the link to these different websites and everything, because otherwise, it takes time for people to trickle in. Generally, yes, sir, we are live. Sir, just give me a moment. I'll just share the link.
Yep.
I'll send it on, I think, Telegram and Twitter first, then maybe Insta also. Uh, Yes, sir. So we already have 5 live viewers, and the link has been shared on Twitter. So, guys, those of you who are live, some of you might know Matkash sir by that particular username, or through any other previous names, or through his real life name. But for this particular conversation, I will just refer to him as Matkash sir or Mr. Tunak. And we will begin our conversation very shortly. We'll just allow a few more people to join in. I think the link needs to be shared on Telegram as well. So if you guys will allow me a moment to do that, I'm sure many of our other friends there will also be happy to uh, listen in. Yes, sir. I think we can dive in straight ahead. I think we're ready to rock and roll. Link has been shared in most important places, and I'll be sharing it while we talk as well. So, sir, just to give a brief introduction to the topic, I think the main topic we'll dive into first is this idea that you've actually been touching upon a lot. And I know that this is something you've actually, it's not something where, you're randomly speaking about. You've actually put in a lot of thought to this. And over the years, since in fact you're a South Indian Brahmin who has lived many years and worked many years in the north as well, you've kind of seen how members of the Brahmin community are living their lives in both places. What maybe the upper crust might be living like, and then there are also, unfortunately, members of the Brahmin community, and as well as other so-called upper caste communities, which don't get any state support. These people who are living in hard times, who have financial problems, other lack of support and everything. and they end up they also get tagged as oppressors and monsters and whatnot, and there is absolutely no mechanism of state support for them in particular in 99% of cases. So sir, that's why I personally definitely like the sound of your idea, and I will give you the floor to please tell us more.
Thank you, Frontier. So I grew up in Tamil Nadu, a state very famous for political apathy, mildly put, towards the Brahmin community. Brahmins are not in great numbers in Tamil Nadu. They are about 3-4%. Honestly speaking, some of those numbers that you see of 0.5%, 0.005, all that is very exaggerated. They are almost close to 4%. And if you take it as a block, right, they are as big as many of the communities that are otherwise very powerful. To put things in greater perspective, right, the number of Brahmins in this country and the NRI population is greater than the number of people belonging to the Sikh and the Christian community. Excuse me. The
Right, sir.
numbers are that
Right.
big. The numbers are that big. But what
Absolutely.
is the political? What is the political clout of the Brahmin community? Next to none. Because if you see the political class as a whole, right, it thrives on a kind of apathy or a kind of active or passive dislike towards the Brahmins. So if you look at even at a very commoner level,
Right.
right, it is the
Right.
Brahmins who are often asked to make sacrifices for the mythical Hindu unity. I am yet to understand what this chimerical Hindu unity is all about. But at what cost? At what price? Is Brahmin pride the price of this mythical Hindu unity that might or might not be achieved? Why should Brahmins alone pay this? And more importantly, right, there hasn't been anybody who has stood up for this community. Okay, this history of being labeled as oppressors, etc. I would like to ask people who so label us, right, what exactly is the evidence? Okay, even if there is an evidence, right, I don't understand how.
Sir, if you can just pardon me for just, sir, half a minute. I just have to take one small delivery, just suddenly come. I was not expecting it this time. If you can just give me, sir, 20-30 seconds, I'll be much obliged. Yes, sir, please.
Yes, I was saying that there has been many allegations about Brahminical oppression. So my question is, first of all, where is this evidence? Second of all, is this evidence from primary sources? And thirdly, more importantly, how can you label, or why are you labeling a community which did not wield power by itself, right? There hasn't been any Brahmin dynasty of any significant size in the last 200, 300 years, right? The Peshwas weren't the sovereigns, right? They weren't the monarch. They were the administrators. So that is the closest to a Brahminical dynasty in the last, say, 350 years. So a community which is quite spread
Right.
and not in great numbers. I don't think Brahmins form more than 20% of any district also, except in certain cases in Himachal Pradesh and in Uttarakhand. So a community which at best
Right, sir.
has about 7-8%, highest in any district or any town of significant size, to be labeled
Right, sir.
as oppressors without a theoretical possibility existing of them being oppressors. Secondly, for about the last 300 years, right, from 1700, it was the British who ruled major parts of what is today India. Likewise, before that, it was Mughals and several other kingdoms which ruled the major parts of India. Where in this
Right.
scheme of things did the Brahmin acquire this notorious power that everyone is uh, attacking him for acquiring, and thereby doing a lot of unnecessarily oppressive activities? So one, this needs to
And
be.
sir, if I might ask a question, sir, in South India, it is how common was it for South Indian Brahmins to be zamindars or large landowners? Was it uncommon or like
So
not?
you look at it today, right? You look at it today. How many people of the Brahmin community have land, great lands as wealth? Very small number, a very small number. There are people. There are people. There are
Right.
significant
Sir,
number of
I
people
think
who.
it might differ from region to region. Like, for example, in parts of eastern UP, Bihar, there might be it is, I guess, fairly common. But then again, if you might go down to in other parts, it probably isn't. Yeah.
It
Yes,
isn't.
sir,
It
please.
isn't. It isn't. It isn't. It isn't as common as you rightly said in some parts of eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. No, there is enough. There are many families and clans who have enough land to be called as landed gentry, but it is not a very widespread phenomenon. Okay, leaving all that aside, right? So what has happened is that this community, the much maligned community, has become a very uh, easy target because of its a lack of concentration in any one particular district or region. As a result, their powers are also greatly diminished, right? If the community existed in significant numbers in one particular place, they would become a very important vote block or a vote bank, but that doesn't exist there. The community is widespread. The community over the course of time has become very meek. I have to say this, we as a community are meek, right? Take the average man, there is significant he's significantly meek. So considering this
Sir,
background, right?
by meek you mean in the sense unwilling to use physical violence in that sense, or in
No,
some
no, no, no.
other?
Unwilling to even resist wanton attacks against himself.
Okay, right. Even to defend himself when
Not
attacked.
even to defend, even to speak up for himself. Defense is
Right,
probably three or
right, sir.
four
That's
years later. This man
right,
is unwilling to even speak for himself in the fear of hurting somebody. I don't understand how you
right,
can hurt somebody by saying things in favor of yourself. If you
right,
notice, one trend that I always follow in my tweets is I do not tweet about communities that are not mine, religions that are not mine, regions that are not mine, because it doesn't matter to me. I am focused on working for my community, my religion, my region, etc. So I
right,
always request people to desist from talking about things that doesn't belong to them or things that they are not a part of. Like we're sticking to it. So an average person of this community, right, is afraid to even speak in favor of himself. So that is the level of meekness that has percolated to the last man on the road. So this is
right,
something that is very common. In fact, in Tamil Nadu, where I grew up, in Karnataka, to where I belong, this is a very common feature, and it is almost accepted as a fact. For example, it's a very funny example, but true. So when Javagal Srinath
sir.
burst into the scene in 90s, right, bowling fast, he was one of the fastest bowlers India had produced till then. So I've
Right,
heard somebody say that how does a Brahmin bowl so fast? From the a member of the Brahmin community himself say that how does he bowl so fast? So he must have done something. He must have eaten meat and things like that. So this is the extent to which they perceive themselves. So this is the background. Community not very
right,
powerful, not very concentrated in any one region to wield any sort of power.
right,
Depending on the compassion and the kindness of people who are otherwise oppressed to them. And this is the
right,
background of this community. And yes, I have to state here that in spite of all this, right, despite all these difficulties, they have
sir.
excelled in academics. They have a fairly good representation in the civil services. They have a fairly good representation in the corporate sector, movie industry, cricket or major sports, as well as the army. The army also
Yes,
has the armed
absolutely, sir.
forces. The armed forces has a disproportionate number of Brahmins. Brahmins say are 5-6%. But another fact that
Definitely,
I
sir.
want to mention
Especially in
is
the officer cadre,
officer cadre.
Brahmins are
Yes,
quite well represented in the,
yes, very well
especially as you
represented.
go senior ranks. Definitely.
Very well represented, right? If I'm not mistaken, the current chief as well as the previous chief were both Brahmins.
Sir, Bipin Rawat was not a Brahmin, but
No, no,
I think
no. No. The previous chief was not Bipin Rawat, right? Late
are you
Bipin
talking
Rawat
about
was. Yeah, Mukund
Naravane?
Naravane.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Yes, he was a Brahmin. He was, I think, a Maharashtrian Brahmin, if I'm not
Yeah,
wrong.
I think there had been one Padmanabhan, then one Sundarji. So
Yeah, in fact, once I shared a list
among
on
15
this
among
subject.
15 chiefs, right? Among 15 chiefs, I think I've named almost 4 or 5. I think General Vaidya was also a Brahmin, so about 6. So there is fairly good
Good
representation in the armed
representative,
forces.
no doubt. Definitely more than their actual population percentage would make one think. Definitely
Yes, and
much
one
more
more
than that.
and one more thing that I want to mention is that if you take India as a whole, right? If you take India as a whole, I think the Yadav community will be the biggest in number at 7% or 8%, closely followed by the Brahmins and Rajputs. So I think at almost 6 or 5%, 5 to 6%, not way lesser than this or not way more than this. So this is the number. So this is the background that I've given. And one more important thing I need to introduce here is the political apathy. If despite all parties being if there are existing differences among all parties on account of ideology, policies, etc., they are almost unified by their Brahmin dislike. I'll make it very very clear. And very
Right, sir.
funnily, right, somebody
Across the board, across the
across
board.
the board, across the board, this is a very very common trait. It's either dislike or apathy. Apathy is euphemism, dislike is probably the reality. So this being said, right, this being said, I have to state here that, and I'm going to be labeled for this, and I've already been labeled 1,000 terms, and I'm not going to care for another label. If at all, I'm not saying, once again, let me be very clear, I do not agree with the policies of this particular two parties that I'm going to mention. But if they have no institutionalized hatred or dislike against Brahmins or any policies which
Right.
typically or easily hurt Brahmins, those are the left parties. Fortunately or unfortunately, the left parties are the least vocal in disliking or having any kind of apathy against the Brahmins. This has to be stated.
So, do you mean antagonism? That their antagonism is not blatant, like unlike the other parties. That's what
Yes,
you're
yes,
saying.
there is. I would go on to the extent of saying there is no open, at least
Antagonism
recorded
at all.
antagonism.
Okay. It might just be in theory or ideological. That's what you're saying.
Not even in theory. Not even in theory. They have not anywhere stated
Right.
in any words or any
Right.
words expressed or implied
That's
any
a
kind
that's a
of
very
dislike.
interesting point, sir. That's a very
Any kind
interesting
of dis.
point because once you say that your ideology is all about class warfare, and that may have its own problems with it, but then it kind of means that you're moving the spotlight away from these kind of things, right? Like
Yes,
religion and
other
caste and
subdivisions, other subdivisions are
exactly
subsumed, right? Other
right.
subdivisions are subsumed. It's a see. I don't agree with it. I do not agree with their economic ideals or political views. But somewhere, if somebody is doing something right, I have absolutely no problem or qualms in accepting that they are right in certain places, or they are at least not wrong in certain places.
Right. Right, sir.
Somebody is asking me not to drink with my left hand. I'll honor that request. Sorry. And yes. So see, this is a common myth, right? One of the comments is that, but the foot soldiers of the left are always behind Brahmins and ridicule Manu. See, the thing is, right? The ramifications and the form some of these movements will acquire, right, is not what it was originally envisaged as. So I will answer Mr. Thunderbug by asking or saying or talking about the RSS or the BJP itself. Is the BJP Are the BJP and RSS pursuing ideals that they originally said they espoused? No, they aren't, right? The form that an organization will acquire 100 years from when it started need not be similar or consistent. This is exactly what Frontier and I were talking about before we went live. I said that one of the things that I wish that my organization would imbibe is a consistency in its approach, in its ideals. And long after I am gone or my next two generations are gone, this organization has to be steadfast in its ideals simply because of the purpose of its existence. The purpose can never, under any circumstances, be diluted. This is what I
Right.
repeatedly insist on. And
Right, sir.
yes,
Sir, if I can just interject. So sorry, sir. Sorry to interrupt your flow,
no
but
problem.
very relevant at this point, sir. Because at when as soon as you say this, right, that previous organizations have been like this, 50 years down the line, they've become completely different. They've completely changed. But the first question which will come to anyone's mind will be, okay, sir, you're saying that your idea is different, but different how? Like, if you can explain, like, in maybe four key ways, five key ways that
Yes,
your
yes.
concept is new, is novel, and will overcome these hurdles which have affected earlier organizations. Please, sir.
Yes, yes, yes. See, one of the foremost things that I insist on doing is that this organization will not comment on the religious, ritualistic matters. There are monastic orders of far greater wisdom, far greater significance than what I or anybody like me can ever produce. This organization will constantly defer to the opinions of these great acharyas and seek their guidance and blessings at all circumstances in religious and ritualistic matters. I hope this is going to make any questions on this. I hope this is going to answer questions that people have been asking me on this particular aspect. Will it welcome every Brahmin of every sub community, or will it be restricted uh, to the to the orders that I believe in, or people like me believe in? No, it would be open to every member of every Brahmin community in India. That is the first thing, that on religious and ritualistic matters, this organization that I intend to form will not pass anything by itself. It will constantly and always defer to the wisdom of the great acharyas who have built long lasting and almost permanent monastic orders. So I hope this answers doubts in the minds of some people. Secondly, this will be run solely through the contributions of members of only the Brahmin community. Not a single paisa will ever be accepted any time in the future. This will be cast in as strict terms as possible. The moment a particular community's bodies start accepting funds from people who
Right.
don't belong to the community, right? There,
There is a tacit quid pro
no,
quo.
no,
Of
it's not.
course.
I'm not even going to quid pro quo, right? I am talking about
Right.
pressures existing for them to be,
Yeah. Of course, sir. Right.
to be grateful to this contribution, and
Right,
in
sir.
that
Right.
expression of gratitude, people could dilute the core ideals of this particular body. Second, this is the second point. This organization, under no circumstances, will not accept any government grants or any contribution from any member of any community other than the Brahmin communities. Absolutely, this is a very strict, very strict part of the existence of this.
Right.
Thirdly, every person, any person, howsoever antagonistic he might be to the Brahmin community, as long as he is a Brahmin, right? He could be as opposed to this body, this community as possible. But as long as he belongs to the Brahmin community, this organization will seek to extend help to him under any
Okay.
circumstances. We believe in not giving up on our own. Under no circumstances will we give up on our own, howsoever misguided at the present moment he might be. This is something that
Right.
I'm going to stick to till whenever I can. Because I have been wrong, I have been misguided, I have made mistakes in my life. If people had given up on me, I would have gone astray, and perhaps I would have led a worse life than what I currently lead. So to give up on a member of your own community is like giving up on your own family member. If, let's say, a teenage son of a couple is imbibing drugs, would they give up on him? They wouldn't, right? They would go to their
Of
best
course not,
extent
sir. Of course
under
not.
every circumstance to rehabilitate this young kid. Likewise, no member of this community, the greater communities, will ever be forsaken. This organization will always stand up for the members in need. And finally, this is not just going to be a political organization or a social organization. I intend to make it commercial also. I intend to make it commercial also. So there are some the
Sir,
services.
sorry, sir, have you thought of what legal form will it take if it has to do so many different kinds of activities? So, what legal structure or legal personality will it have?
See that
Sorry
is
if
being
it
worked
seems a
upon.
bit unnecessary, but I
That is
just
being
felt
worked
like,
upon. That is being worked upon. So it will be something
sir.
like the. See, I can give you a close example. It can be something like the BCCI. The BCCI
Okay,
is the core reason for the BCCI's existence is promotion of the game of cricket, right? And
right,
other
sir.
sports, I believe. Likewise, the core reason for the existence of this community, this organization, will be the promotion of interest and welfare of the Brahmin community, but it will indulge in certain commercial aspects within the pursuit of those ideals for which it exists. So there could be hundreds of things. There could be an organized a group that will help facilitate finding, say, purohits for the performance of a puja for weddings. It could help people with interpretation of shastras. It would organize research studies in certain scriptures. It could
Right,
have,
sir. Right,
it could start a school, a college, sports facilities, and help
right.
people prepare for competitive exams like your army exam. If Agnipath is going to exist 20 years from
Right.
now, maybe for the
So,
Agnipath
so,
exam.
so, so when we come to this juncture, so you raised, like, as an example, you mentioned, running these, let's say, educational institutions, or preparing a sports ground or something like that. These kind of facilities for members of the Brahmin community. But at this juncture, someone might, come up and ask you and say that, the under the current circumstances in India, let's say you have things like RTE and all these sorts of different legislations, and the political establishment also is not very forgiving towards communities, exercising even their basic, very basic autonomy. So some people might say it's better to look outside, maybe think about establishing a base here, but then trying out the first few experiments at some scale, in places abroad where the Indian government's, the establishments anti, let's say, anti Brahmin, anti UC legislations do not restrict your activities so much. So do you think that's an option, realistically?
See, unfortunately, right, I don't think that running away from one would resolve the problem. The government's reach is wide, and it can go to any extent and to any place to stop your activities if it so wishes. Running away from this part of the country is not going to, or running away from the country in itself is not going to solve the problem if the government on the other side is determined to stop your activities. The better thing is to face it through the current remedies available, legal and judicial, right? I'm sorry, the other side. The legal remedies or other remedies available, available to anyone. So I don't see establishing a footprint outside India for this purpose, but I do see establishing a footprint outside India
Okay.
for other purposes, for purposes of forming
Right.
alliances with like-minded entities outside India,
Right.
and like-minded organizations outside India. I am a
Right.
big fan of China, so I would definitely like to set up some form of a cultural alliance with, say, a very important group in China, in Myanmar, in Thailand. Yes, I do have these aims. Yes, within whatever is allowed, right? Every country does allow cultural integration, or not. I'm sorry, cultural alliances and discussions with members of other countries, and there is no harm in exploring these possibilities.
Right, right, sir. And just to kind of, if I just had to give one or two inputs, so, sir, one is more of a question, but the other thing with regard to creating an international network and expanding the footprint internationally, I think one very important aspect there is that you can maintain your financial and funding autonomy, right? Like, no one particular jurisdiction or government can all of a sudden decide to freeze all your accounts, or decide that you are no longer allowed to take donations from so and so, and all those kind of things. So I'm sure you know a lot more about these things than I do, sir, coming from your
See,
background.
it is
Sure.
just to interject here. It is theoretically impossible. It could be only a short term measure by anybody who restricts funding for a legitimate organization, right? That cannot sustain
Okay.
any government, even a government, let's say, wholly and maliciously opposed to my existence, cannot touch my finances for more than a short term if every
Right.
aspect of my finances
Okay.
is legitimate and does not
So,
have any illegality.
okay. So you just see it as a temporary inconvenience if they do
Yes,
something like that.
at best, right? See, there are some people who would give up at that stage. But if you're resolving to do something which is of permanent, which is
Okay, sir.
permanent, right? You're not going to
Right.
be you're not going to be browbeaten by these things. These are very small things to fear.
Right. So, okay. So the other input, which is actually a question. So I wanted to ask you if you've given thought to the leadership structure. So how do you make sure? So this is kind of like, a smaller scale conundrum of the bigger issue of how do you make sure that power does not become centralized or monopolized and is not abused by a cabal or a particular clique of individuals for their own personal benefit rather than the community's benefit, right? So how do you create such a structure of first of all exercising power and then transferring that power on over the years, sir?
Yes. Okay. So this will be the power structure, right? Re-election. It's not going to be just election, or it is not going to be selection. It is going to be a combination. Let's say that there is a board of trustees, and for the board of trustees to continue in its position, right, for more than one term, there will be a series of examinations. It will be a test of one's physical capabilities, mental capabilities, and finally there will be an election also. There will be a ballot and something like that. So the combination of these results will together determine somebody's eligibility to remain in this post. So a cabal can itself not uproot or unseat somebody merely by voting against him. There will be these examinations in which scores can ensure that even if a particular group of people is trying to oust you, you can, through your own merit, retain your seat. So it will be a combination of that, and this is currently a thought in process. It hasn't acquired a final form, but this is the structure of sorts that is going to exist. It is as simple as that. That the person who is responsible for making decisions should be considered wise enough to make those decisions. He does not get a hereditary right to be on that table. He does not get a privilege through previous selection to continue to remain on the table. He has to prove himself constantly. Continuous professional education that most professional bodies these days come up with, something of those sorts. He should be still one of the fittest people in terms of the examinations that he is put to face, and he should also retain an element of popularity. So a combination of these two. There will be exceptions to these. So there will be some experts who would be part of this board of trustees or the governing body, and they would not be easily they cannot be easily removed because they owe their seat in that particular table to some expertise that is indispensable. So there will be a combination of these factors, and it is not going to be easy for somebody to remain in this table without deserving to be, and it is not going to be easy to remove somebody from this table who is deserving to be in this table. I hope this answers your question.
Right. Yeah. So for the most part, it does. Obviously, like I don't think this is this current discussion. In this current discussion, we can go into the absolute minute details, but I think that is pretty straightforward and
I'll give you an example, right? If everything goes
sure.
well, I'll be the founder. I'll be the founder of this organization. For me to continue in the board, I have to pass the eligibility criteria, do well in the examinations that is set, and also be elected by at least a fair number of people, because even a diminishing popularity is sign that I'm not fit to be part of this. So this rule will apply to everybody, including the founders.
All right. All right, sir. Sir, and if I may ask, if you're willing to share this, sir, so in your opinion, this kind of an organization, right? Like initially, what level of support does it actually need to become a reality? Let's say for the viewers, for the people who are watching, I really hope at least some people come out and support you in any way possible. But what level of practical support do you need bare minimum just to get this off the ground?
No, it's impossible without support. I'm telling you, the structure that I'm envisaging is that about 8 to 12 members in the governing board, about 30-40 administrative staff who will do the routine things, the administration, the filing of taxes, the governmental permissions, etc. And about 30-40 members running the various departments. The departments are going to be multiple. There is going to be a department for your scriptural studies. There is going to be a department for political liaison. There is going to be a department for your sports, for your education. And there'll be about, like I said, right, 30 to 50 members to run these departments. That is the managers and his deputy, and about 5 members. So it will have a staff of about 250 people in its form. So
Okay,
it's
sir.
not easy to run an organization with 250 members in its staff. And the revenue initially, at least in the initial few years before it starts producing any product or service of repute, is going to be purely donations. So for the first,
Right,
let's
sir.
say, 5 years, where its sustenance and existence is going to be dependent on, it's purely going to be dependent on the donations of the community, right? It is going to
Right, sir.
require a lot of
Right,
support. I am looking at support to the extent of around 20 crores a year in its
sir.
let's say in its palm. Not initially it's not going to spend that much, but
Right.
imagine this is the kind of
So, but
cost
you're
that it
saying
will incur.
it needs a reserve fund of that at least to
Yes,
start off,
it
right?
needs a reserve fund of close to 100 crores. Let me give you an example.
100.
Let me give you
Okay.
an example. Let me give you an example. Let's say some member
Right,
of the
sir.
community is in Fiji. Okay,
Sir.
he's on a holiday. He enters
Right.
into some problem, some legal problem, as a result of which he is held by the authorities. Now, if I were to arrange for support, this community will arrange for support. This organization will arrange for legal, medical, other support as soon as possible. If I were to arrange for support, the basic expenditure it will require to hire a lawyer in either Australia or Fiji, transport him, etc., will take close to about 3 to 5 lakhs, right?
Right,
But if
sir.
we are
Right.
if we
Absolutely.
are going to if we are going to be available for every Brahmin in the time of his need, it requires
Yeah.
at least a corpus of 100 crores. And one thing that I'll be very clear of, I don't want to personally benefit from it. I have absolutely no intention to personally benefit from it. The accounts can and will be as transparent as possible. It will be
Right.
open for anybody to inspect. Anybody with any knowledge of accounting
Sir,
can inspect.
sir, I had a question for you, sir. In fact, in the previous stream itself, when I was talking to Curse Raita Takes, we were briefly talking about this as well. But I just want some if you I wanted to throw some light on this, sir. So we have seen, time and again that many charitable organizations, NGOs, and not just even in India also, but many international agencies which are quite reputable. If you look at their spending structure, we see a bulk of the money actually going into admin expenses and executive bonuses and things like that. So how do these organizations get away with things like that, and how do they cook up their books? And as can you give some tips or some advice for a person donating to a charity, to how to make sure that your money is not being misused? Like if there is any simple way to make sure of that.
See, it's impossible. Let me be very honest. Let me be very honest, right? These allegations will continue to be cast. These aspersions will be continue to be cast on anything and everything.
Right.
The only thing that can combat this is transparency. But the problem is that you cannot satisfy everybody all the time. So even transparency might not be enough in certain cases. So uh, what we can do is something these much maligned terms like out of turn payments, bonuses, etc. We can ensure that the the trust the board of trustees, right, they do not participate in these things. And everything that is paid to the normal employees, the regular employees, will have to be determined on the basis of some performance scorecard or the like. So if everything
Right,
is
sir.
documented and open for inspection, right, we can definitely offer a chance to scrutinize, and we can at least convince the people who are willing to be convinced with knowledge. there would continue to be people who would doubt everything that is ever uttered. We can never satisfy their doubts, and we can never answer all their questions. I agree with that. But if we make it as transparent as possible, right, that is the only antidote I can currently think of. To be very fair, right, it is too far-fetched for me to think about how bonuses might be misused when my organization itself is an idea at best at this point in time.
Right. So that, yeah, that makes sense. That I think.
Like I said, right, there will be an examination. There will
Right.
be whatever scientific and evidence-based methods to establish these handouts, so that nobody feels slighted and prejudiced. There should
Right.
be no open and implied bias. If there are any questions of bias, we must be willing to be more transparent to make it clear that it is open to
Right.
scrutiny, and
Right, sir.
accusations of bias will be investigated against very fairly.
So, like, if anyone, has any, misgivings or doubts, at the very least you are willing and, able to tell them right now that, look, whatever standards of audits and bookkeeping we will have, they will definitely be towards the
I'll
much
I'll put
much
it this
higher
way.
side, right?
I'll I'll
Would
I'll
you?
put it
Okay,
this
sir.
way. I'll put it this way, Frontier. See, this is an organization for our own, right? It's for our own communities' welfare and strength. It's like an extended family. People have to treat it as such. And in a family, right, somewhere we trust the judgment of, say, the father, the mother, right? And in cases of confrontation, we ask them for some sort of scrutiny. If they are willing, that itself is an answer that they are clean. So likewise, right, this is also an extended family, and any doubts will not be treated as doubts, but questions from other family members which need to be answered fairly and transparently. And we will subject ourselves to this level of scrutiny. Everything is free for every member of the but very very strictly, because I forbid donations from anybody outside the community, right? This organization will not be answerable to anybody outside of the community except those which are required uh, for regulation purposes. Like anybody outside the community who's not a regulator will not be answered. As simple as that. I will refuse to answer because it doesn't concern him. My
Right.
family's finances, my family's secrets do not concern you. Likewise,
Right.
this
Absolutely.
organization's
That.
secrets and existence doesn't concern people who are neither regulators nor members. I hope
Right.
this is also making it
Right.
clear.
So, by members, do you mean members of the Brahmin community, or specifically members of the Brahmin community who are also members of the trust somehow?
Every member of the Brahmin community in India and any part of the world will by
Okay.
default become member of this community. Everybody.
All right, sir. So, and I mean, let me just throw a very, let's say, unusual situation. Like you said, that you personally understand that, the certain individuals might, in a point in time, be misguided ideologically or politically or whatever. But let's say an individual comes and says that, legally, I'm giving you a notice that I want to have nothing to do with you or your organization, and you do not represent me, and this is my legal, whatever, right? So to such an individual, then for all practical purposes, that essentially does mean, right, that all ties are severed. But in from your end, how would you look at a person like that? You wouldn't
I
feel
would
any
still I
animosity?
No, the community will continue to offer every possible help to him as possible. But the community, but the organization will also defend itself. The organization will also defend itself from attacks within and without.
Right. Right, sir.
See,
And
compassion doesn't mean lowering your guard. You have
absolutely.
your guard in place and know when to do what. Compassion. Once again, I'm saying compassion doesn't mean lowering one's guard. One always has to be alert.
Sir, 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 I have, sir, just if you will permit me, two more, last two questions, very short, sir. Sir, one question is related again to the substance of how this plan will go about, which is that you mentioned that eventually you would want the organization or trust or whatever to also generate revenue through commercial activities, right? Sir, could you give any sort of examples, any hypothetical sectors where you think it could are you specifically looking at traditional medicine or something related to the Brahmin community, or something else
One,
entirely?
one is interpretation of scriptures.
Okay.
One is interpretation of scriptures, and I think that's a very neglected field. Uh,
Right.
Almost any person who can interpret the scriptures of their religion in religions outside Hinduism is greatly revered.
Right.
Anybody who can interpret the scriptures of many other religions are put at a pedestal far above the common man is. Only in
Sir.
Hinduism do you not have this kind of treatment. So we have to change that. Interpretation of our scriptures is very important because a lot of nonsense is being peddled in the name of interpretation. If people who are qualified enough can interpret it, and people who are qualified enough can translate it into many languages, I think it in itself would be a very successful venture. Then
Right.
there is culinary skills. Brahmin cuisines is widely enjoyed and loved. So if you can commercialize these culinary skills and other aspects of it, that would be another. Thirdly,
Sir.
matrimony.
Right.
Matrimony is something that if it done at a larger scale through, see, the thing is, right, most of these matrimony websites do not have a personal touch. This organization could even bring a personal touch to the discussion of matrimony among members who are not geographically located in the same region. There are hundreds of things that I can think of. So these are the three things that come immediately to my mind, and then you have your educational coaching institutes and things like that that you can extend to for the benefit of the members of this community. So these are some of the commercial aspects that I've currently thought about, but there
Sir.
could be many.
Definitely, definitely, sir. I think these are ones, which you've probably already thought of, like giving a very small amount of your time. And I'm sure there are, like, other viewers, commenters who would also have many of their own ideas. I'm sure people would love to share them with you. So last question, or actually an invitation for some final remarks intended towards those kind of people who want to, somehow aid you in this objective, achieving this noble, honest aim, which is very necessary, to make sure that so many people who are deprived, who are helpless today, from the Brahmin community, get the help they need, they deserve, and they can live a very dignified life. So how would you suggest a person should approach you, or in what way do you want people to come forth and help you? What are you looking? How can a normal person come today, from the Brahmin community, come today and pitch in? So please, if you can.
Yes, yes. Thank you. This is very important. See, obviously, right, the organization's existence should be widely publicized. The organization will come up with regular events that will showcase its existence, purpose of existence, and possibilities of activities. Then we should have a very dedicated website, constantly manned by competent staff. And finally, we are looking. I probably will look at channels through media like YouTube or whatever the replacement of YouTube could be several years from now. So we have
Sir.
to be present, we have to be accessible, and we have to uh, advertise ourselves in important ways. We have to let
Sir.
people know that we exist.
Right. Sir, I will also just, as I just forgot to mention, I'll also definitely post all your social media details so that people can, follow you on social media, and, maybe discuss their thoughts on this issue with you, and, help out in any way they can. Because as you said, sir, definitely this is such a mammoth task that it is actually not one, or 5 or 10 people's task. It does require, like, I guess, a small army in a sense. So I'm so glad, sir, you gave your time, and I would definitely like to discuss this further with you, and a bunch of other things, sir. about the Brahmin community, their issues, larger political, social issues in our country, even economic issues. If in the future we get some time, sir, I'm sure we can have many more such discussions. Thank you so much, Matkash sir.
I would be happy to, but unfortunately, I had to sandwich this session between two of my sporting session and some commitment
So,
outside that I have to
so
partake
please,
in.
please, I don't want to, cut into your, personal time. But any day, sir, even if it's a bit later on, like in a month or a few weeks, if you do have a little bit of time,
I will be very happy to. I will be very happy
sure,
to
sir.
seek all seek all guidance, all advice that well-intentioned people do offer, and
Sure, sir.
I would be happy to receive anything and everything from people who think that we
Absolutely,
should
sir.
succeed in our venture.
Absolutely. I also like one final request I have from everyone, and particularly since Sir said that he wants to keep it as an organization with a very clear ideological viewpoint and perspective. If you want to, in the future, be one of the initial members or one of the volunteers who helps get this thing off the ground and you belong to this community and you want to help your people, please get in touch with sir. I will try and share his details as widely as possible. Please ask him if you have doubts. Ask him doubts here in the comments, or go to Twitter, go to his social media, and please try to support this cause. I really do think, not just in fact the Brahmin community, my own community, the Rajput community, the Khatri community, the Baniya communities. There are many other communities as well in India which are unfortunately facing similar problems today. I don't want to take it away from the main topic, which is the Brahmin community's welfare. But I do think that this idea and its innovations will come in handy for other communities as well. Thank you so much, sir. Goodbye. Take care. Good
Yeah, yeah.
afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Frontier. Thank you so much for everybody who participated and some of you who are posting your comments through chat. And as always, glory to Sri Rama. Jai Sri Ram. Thank you.
Jai Shri Rama. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Matkash sir. Goodbye, everyone. May Bhagwan take care of everyone and their families and friends.